Today marks what would have been my 10th wedding anniversary with my ex-wife, Anna. I'm 32 now, and Anna is 31. We met in middle school, started dating in high school, and got married right after we graduated college. We've been through a lot together, and for a long time, everything seemed perfect. We have 3 kids together. The early years of our marriage were pretty traditional. Anna stayed home to raise the kids while I worked. It seemed like a good arrangement at the time. But as the years went on, I noticed things were changing with her. She seemed more and more bored with being a stay-at-home mom, and it felt like the spark in her life had faded. After a while, she decided to go back to school and finish her degree. It seemed like a positive step. I supported her decision and thought it would help her find fulfillment. But just one semester before graduation, Anna decided that the major she was pursuing no longer interested her. She dropped out of college, and instead of going back to school, she started working as a waitress at a local restaurant. At the restaurant, she made a new friend, Monica, her coworker. Monica was 38, and she seemed to be a good influence on Anna. Anna was enjoying the work and even seemed to thrive in this new environment. She made friends for the first time in years, and her depression, which had been a lingering issue for a while, started to lift. She seemed happier and more energized, and I was genuinely glad to see her doing well again. Since she was working nights and weekends, I took on more responsibilities at home. I adjusted my work schedule so I could be flexible enough to take the kids to and from school, attend their sports practices, and be home on days when Anna wasn't around. I took care of most of the household chores, cleaning, shopping, laundry, you name it. Anna had gone through some rough years with depression, including a suicide attempt, so I didn't mind stepping up if it helped her focus on something that was making her happy. After a few months working at the restaurant, Anna became close with some of her female coworkers, including Monica. Around that time, she started telling me more about her interactions with a guy named Dan, who worked as a line cook at the restaurant. Dan was 24, and I didn't think much of him at first. Anna would tell me the usual work stories, funny things that happened at the restaurant, how they reacted to rude customers, the latest gossip from the young staff. It seemed normal. But as time went on, she started talking more about Dan. At first, it was just casual mentions, how he was nice, or how he was friendly with her. But then it started to shift. She began telling me about how Dan was hitting on her, complimenting her looks, and calling her pretty. I tried to brush it off at first. He was just a coworker, right? Maybe I was being paranoid. But as Anna continued to bring him up, something started to feel off. I could tell she was enjoying the attention, and that made me uncomfortable. At this point, I didn't say anything to her, but in my gut, I could sense that things were changing. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but I started to feel like something was brewing. Something that I didn't want to acknowledge, but knew deep down was happening. I didn't know exactly what it was, but I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to her relationship with Dan than she was telling me. Over the next few months, I tried to have conversations with Anna about what I was feeling. I told her that I felt like her relationship with Dan was crossing a line, and I asked her to shut down any non-professional interactions between them. I wasn't accusing her of anything at that point, but I wanted to make it clear that I wasn't comfortable with how close they were getting. I asked her to keep it strictly professional. At first, she assured me that Dan had stopped hitting on her. She promised that nothing was happening and that everything was fine. As time went on, I stopped hearing about Dan altogether. I figured she was telling me the truth, or at least that she wasn't entertaining his advances anymore. I didn't know if it was the reassurance I wanted or just me convincing myself that everything was fine, but I allowed it to slide. Unfortunately, as the months went on, our marriage seemed to decline. We stopped putting effort into dating each other, and the small moments we used to enjoy together became less frequent. We stopped making time to spend with one another. I couldn't pinpoint when exactly things began to feel off, but it was clear something had changed. We still lived under the same roof, shared responsibilities as parents, and went through the motions, but the connection we once had wasn't the same. I didn't outright know she was cheating on me, but the signs were there. Our communication had become strained, and the distance between us grew wider with every passing day. Still, I didn't have concrete proof, and for a while, I held on to hope that things would get better. That was until March of this year. One night, Anna didn't come home after work. It had become a regular thing for her to go out with her coworkers for drinks after their shifts ended. I had been okay with it at first, happy that she was making friends and doing something outside of being at home. I didn't mind it at all. I wanted her to have a good time. But this night, she didn't come home, and something about it didn't sit right with me. I remember I was trying to wait up for her, but I ended up falling asleep on the couch. I woke up in the middle of the night, and it hit me. She still wasn't home. It wasn't like her to be out this late without telling me anything. I pulled out my phone and called her 3 times. I wasn't angry, just worried. I wanted to know if she was okay, if she was safe. On the third call, she finally answered. She sounded groggy, like she had been sleeping, and she told me she'd had too much to drink and was staying at Monica's house. She said she'd be home in the morning, and before I could ask anything more, she hung up the phone. Monica, her best friend, had been around for years. I'd met her several times, and we'd even gone on double dates with her and her ex-husband, James, before their divorce. Monica had a daughter the same age as our daughter, and they were best friends. She had always been a part of our lives, and I thought I knew her well. But there was a problem with Anna's story. Monica and I had been at our daughter's dance practice that night. We were both there, sitting in the stands, watching our girls. Monica was with her daughter, and I was with mine. I knew she wasn't out at some bar drinking with Anna. She had been at dance practice, just like I had. So why was Anna saying she was at Monica's house? I decided I was going to confront Anna about it the next day. But first, I tried to get some sleep, knowing the kids would be up early and I needed to rest. As I was drifting off, though, something hit me. Anna and I shared our phone locations through a parental control app for our daughter. It's something we'd set up to track her phone for safety reasons. I suddenly remembered that we used it, and without thinking, I opened the app to check where Anna was. What I saw made my heart stop. Her location was not at Monica's house. She was in an apartment building several miles away, a place I recognized immediately. It was the same building she had once told me was Dan's apartment when we were driving past it a while back. I sat there, frozen, for the next 3 hours. I couldn't move, couldn't think. I was in shock, replaying everything in my mind, wondering if this was a sign that things were worse than I had imagined. I couldn't believe what I was seeing, and I couldn't shake the feeling that my worst fears were coming true. I couldn't get the image of her in that apartment out of my head. I waited for her to come home, trying to think of what I'd say to her. I was furious, confused, and heartbroken all at once. How could she do this to me? Why did she lie about where she was? Why didn't she just tell me the truth? But I had to be calm. I had to think clearly. The moment she walked through the door, I was going to confront her with everything I knew. It was 5:30 a.m. when I heard the garage door open. The moment I heard it, my heart skipped a beat. Anna was finally home. A few minutes later, she stumbled through the door, looking disoriented and heavily under the influence. Her eyes were bloodshot, and it was clear she hadn't gotten any sleep. It was like she was trying to hold herself together, but I could see the cracks. I asked her, flat out, where she had been and why she hadn't come home the night before. She gave me the same story she had already told me over the phone. She was at Monica's, drinking too much, and couldn't drive herself home safely. But something about it didn't sit right with me. I had already seen Monica at our daughter's dance practice, and I knew she was with her daughter the whole time. So I called her out. I told Anna that I knew Monica had been there, so it didn't add up that she was with her. Anna's face changed. She immediately dropped the story about Monica and came up with another excuse. This time, she said she had been at her coworker and friend Natalie's house. That didn't make sense either. I knew Natalie lived in a single-family house, and I had checked Anna's location. It showed her in an apartment building, not a house. I wasn't buying it, and I wasn't going to let her lie to me anymore. The tension in the room was thick, and it felt like time was standing still as I processed everything. Finally, I asked the question that had been eating at me ever since I had found out about the affair. "Are you having an affair with Dan?" For a long moment, Anna didn't say a word. She just nodded. That was it. The truth. Right there. She admitted it. After everything, I felt numb. But I had to stay focused. I knew we needed to talk, to figure out if there was any chance of salvaging what we had or if our marriage was truly over. Over the next few weeks, we spent a lot of time discussing our future, whether we could repair things or whether the damage was too much to fix. We went to couples therapy, and I started going to therapy on my own. I knew deep down that I didn't love her the way I used to, but I was still willing to try. I didn't want to lose time with my kids if we were to separate, and I wanted to make sure I gave it a fair shot. Anna agreed to try to work things out, and she told me she had ended things with Dan. She said she broke up with him at a coffee shop, not knowing how he would react, but wanting to do it in a public place so he couldn't escalate things. That night, I spent hours consoling my wife as she cried about the breakup. I was there for her, even though it felt strange after everything that had happened. The next few weeks were a roller coaster. Anna and I went on a few dates, trying to reconnect. Each one felt forced. It was like we were strangers on a blind first date, struggling to find things to talk about. The connection we once had seemed distant, and it was hard to even enjoy each other's company. There were a few moments of warmth, but most of the time, it felt like we were both just going through the motions, trying to pretend that things hadn't changed. A week later, I found out that Anna had been talking to Dan again. The trust one had started to rebuild in her shattered all over again. I knew I couldn't just ignore it, so I talked to Monica about it. By this point, Monica knew about the affair and was just as frustrated as I was. We decided to have an intervention of sorts with Anna. I didn't ask too many details about what they were going to say to her. I trusted Monica and her friends to do what they thought was best. So, after spending the afternoon with the kids and our family, I drove home. When we were a few blocks away from our house, I pulled over in front of Monica's home. Anna saw the other cars in the driveway and immediately realized what was happening. She refused to go inside at first, but after a few moments, she reluctantly agreed. I didn't know what to expect from the intervention, but I knew it had to happen. I needed her to face the consequences of her actions, to see how much damage she had caused, and hopefully make a decision about where she wanted to go from here. When Anna came back home, she was still undecided. She said she needed time to think about whether she wanted to be with Dan or stay with me. It was like she was torn between two lives, two people. I didn't know what the right answer was anymore. We went to bed that night, both of us uncertain about what would happen next. After agreeing to continue therapy and work on our relationship, Anna and I made a deal. No more seeing Dan. We both said we wanted to make things work, that we tried to rebuild the trust and figure out a way to move forward. But a week later, I got a text from an unknown number that made everything fall apart. The message was simple but devastating. Anna was still seeing Dan. At first, I tried to get more details, asking questions to figure out who was behind the text. It quickly became clear that the person knew way too much. They worked with Anna. In that moment, I knew, without a doubt, that my marriage was over. The mystery texter eventually revealed their identity. As I spoke with them, as well as with Monica and a few of Anna's coworkers, I found out just how deep the affair had gone. It wasn't just a few dates or an innocent flirtation. It had been happening for more than 6 months. Anna and Dan had even been talking about getting married and having kids. The more I heard, the more disgusted and betrayed I felt. But that wasn't the worst part. I learned that Anna had been going to extreme lengths to hide her affair from me. After I started checking her location, she began parking her car in public places, places I wouldn't think twice about. Her work, a friend's house, a grocery store, making it look like she was doing something legitimate. Meanwhile, she was still sneaking around with Dan, continuing the affair behind my back. It was all a carefully crafted lie, and I couldn't believe how far she had gone to keep deceiving me. That night, after finding all of this out, I couldn't sleep. I was furious. I couldn't keep pretending like everything was fine, couldn't keep allowing myself to be lied to. So I woke Anna up. It was late, and she was groggy when she looked at me, but I knew what I had to do. I told her it was over. I told her we were getting a divorce, and I made it clear that I wanted her out of the house as soon as possible. The rest, how we divide everything, what we do with the kids, all of that, could wait for later. But I couldn't stay in this marriage any longer. She had broken my trust, and I was done. In the weeks leading up to the separation, I spent a lot of time talking to Monica. I wasn't sure if I was just trying to get some guidance or if I was subconsciously trying to get closer to her, but we ended up texting a lot. It wasn't about anything inappropriate, but I'll admit I was looking for answers. We talked about how I should approach Anna, and Monica helped me confirm when Anna was working. I didn't want to assume anything anymore, but I had to be sure that Anna wasn't still lying to me, hiding things or trying to cover up the affair. Monica would let me know when Anna would be at work, which at least gave me some peace of mind during that time. Looking back, I realized how strange it was to be texting with Monica so much during that time. She was Anna's best friend, but I was using her as a source of information to help me navigate my own marriage. The lines were getting blurred, but at the time, I was so deep in trying to salvage something that was already broken that I didn't think about it too much. I had to know the truth about what Anna was doing, and Monica was the only one who seemed to know everything that was going on. She was caught in the middle, but I didn't blame her. But after the text that night and everything I had learned, I couldn't stay quiet anymore. I had given Anna every chance, every opportunity to make it right, and she chose to keep lying and betraying me. So, I made the decision to end it. There was no going back. I had to protect myself, and most importantly, protect my kids from all of this mess. After making the decision to separate from Anna, I joined a few dating apps. Honestly, at first, it was just a way to show her that I was serious and moving on. I wasn't really in any position to start dating again. My head was still spinning from everything that had happened, but I knew I couldn't stay stuck in this place where I felt miserable. I wanted to show her that I was done, that I wasn't going to just sit around and let my life be defined by her betrayal. One evening, while the kids were with Anna, I found myself mindlessly swiping right and left on one of the dating apps. I was texting Monica at the same time. She had been checking in on me, making sure I was doing okay. We started talking about how awful Anna had treated both of us, and at some point, I decided to ask Monica if she wanted to grab drinks. We hadn't spent much time together outside of being around the kids, but I thought it would be nice to just talk. It felt like the right time, and honestly, I was hoping it would help me clear my head. Throughout the whole affair, Anna had lied to both of us. She'd lied to Monica about spending time with her, saying she was hanging out with Monica when she was really with Dan. And she had lied to me, too, making excuses for the time she spent with him. Monica had been hurt by all of that, and I think we both needed to let off some steam and talk about how messed up everything had become. The evening with Monica went better than I expected. We spent 3 hours just talking and laughing, sharing stories about our exes and how they had treated us. Monica's divorce was further along than mine, so we even chatted about the legal side of things, how the process had been going for her. I had known Monica for years, but always as Anna's best friend. Spending time with her one-on-one allowed me to see a completely different side of her, and honestly, I was surprised by how much I enjoyed it. She was funny, smart, and really easy to talk to, and I found myself enjoying her company more than I had anticipated. A few weeks later, Anna finally moved out. She rented a new place, and it felt like we were starting a new chapter of our lives, separate lives. We could finally start moving forward, apart from one another. I was relieved. The tension was gone, and even though there was a lot of sadness, it felt like the first step toward rebuilding my life. Since then, things have been a tale of two stories. I've been in a relationship with Monica for the past 6 months, and it's been incredible. Finally, I've found someone who makes me happy, someone who's a genuinely good person, and who actually enjoys spending time with me. It's been a breath of fresh air. I've lost weight, I work out several times a week, and I even completed my first triathlon. The physical changes have been huge for me, but more importantly, the mental and emotional changes have been even greater. I've spent more quality time with my kids, doing fun activities and introducing them to new things. It feels like we're all thriving. On the other hand, Anna's life has taken a turn for the worse. She got pregnant right after moving out, which seemed to happen almost immediately. She quit her job. Well, she was about to be fired for sexual harassment, as she had been Dan's supervisor at the restaurant. She bought a new car for Dan, and shortly after, she lost the job she had just gotten. News started spreading about Dan using cocaine and selling drugs, and it turned out he had been fired from the restaurant for being high while working. It felt like everything in her life was falling apart. She's also lost most of her friends. Once the truth about the affair came out, people started distancing themselves from her. It's honestly hard to feel bad for her when she's made so many terrible decisions. But it's a different story when it comes to our kids. That's where I still feel pain, knowing she's still in their lives, making bad choices that affect them. I can't protect them from everything, but I'm trying to give them a better example. Overall, though, I'm significantly happier than I was before. The pain of what Anna did is still there, but it's not all-consuming anymore. I've moved on. I've found someone who values me, and I'm in a much better place now, mentally and emotionally. It's still a work in progress, but it feels like I'm finally taking control of my life.